Hello, and welcome to Chubu University's Web Open Campus. My name is David Lawrence, and I'm a professor with Chubu University's Department of English Language and Culture. Today, I'm going to give you a short lecture on some simple one-point lessons in English. Let's start with something simple, with greetings. One-point lesson one. Let's think of this conversation. For example, Shiori and her friend Steve are meeting in the hallway before class, and Steve says, "Hi Shiori, how are you?" What do you think Shiori will say? A lot of you might say, "I'm fine, thank you." That's our first one-point lesson, is greetings. I'm fine, thank you. Actually, native English speakers, when they're talking to each other, they almost never respond to "how are you" with "I'm fine, thank you." In fact, it sounds sort of strange and old-fashioned. It's not something that we say to each other. What we'd say instead is, if it's a formal situation, like if you're talking to a teacher or a parent, you might say, "Very well, thank you." If it's a normal situation with a classmate or someone you know kind of well, you might say, "I'm great, thanks." And if it's an informal situation, talking to a friend, you might say, "Great, thanks." But we usually wouldn't say, "I'm fine, thank you." That's something that we learn in school, which we usually don't actually say. So, if we think of that, we can practice. For example, here we have Shiori and her teacher. And her teacher says, "How are you today, Shiori?" What do you think she might say? And if she's talking to her best friend Steve, Steve might say, "Hi Shiori, how are you?" What might she say? Let's think about that. So with her teacher, she's going to be a little bit formal. So we could say, "How are you today, Shiori?" "Very well, thank you." And with her friend Steve, Steve might say, "Hi Shiori, how are you?" And she could say, "Great, thanks." Great, thanks is a very useful greeting. So almost always, if someone says, "How are you today?" you could say, "Great, thanks," or "Great, thank you." We usually wouldn't say, "I'm fine, thank you." Let's think about lesson two, a little bit more difficult grammar. Kenta and Susan are talking after class in the classroom. And Kenta has a plan to go shopping on Saturday. And Susan says, "What's your plan for the weekend, Kenta?" What do you think Kenta will say? Let's think about that. Or this one. Kenta and Susan are talking after class. Susan says, "Oops, I dropped my pen." What might Kenta say? Pick it up for you. Let's think about that. So this point is will and be going to. Okay? So some of you might say, "Oh, I will go shopping." Or, "I'm going to pick it up for you." Actually, that's not correct English. Let's think about that. So will and be going to, how to use them differently. Be going to, we use when we have a plan to do something. So for example, Susan says, "What's your plan for the weekend, Kenta?" Kenta would say, "I'm going to go shopping." If Susan says, "Oops, I dropped my pen," Kenta doesn't have a plan to pick up Susan's pen. He decides to do it right then. So he won't say, "I'm going to pick it up for you." So if we have a plan to do something, we'll say, "I'm going to." If we don't have a plan, if we decide right now, we will not say, "I'm going to." So will is used when we just decided to do something. Okay? So for example, Susan, "Oops, I dropped my pen." Kenta says, "I'll pick it up for you," because he decided to pick it up for her right then. But if Susan says, "What's your plan for the weekend, Kenta?" Kenta won't say, "I'll go shopping," because he has a plan. So he'll use "I'll be going to." I'm going to. So we can practice. For example, if Kenta says, "What are you doing after school today, Susan?" Go straight home. What do you think she'll say? "I'll go straight home," or "I'm going to go straight home." If Kenta says, "Wow, this bag is heavy," Susan will say, "Oh," with help you. Will she say, "I'm going to help you with it?" Or will she say, "I'll help you with it"? And Kenta says, "What are you doing after school today, Susan?" Susan says, "I don't know yet. Maybe go to the park." Maybe I will go to the park, or maybe I'm going to go to the park. Let's see. So for example, if Kenta says, "What are you doing after school today, Susan?" Susan will say, "I'm going to go straight home," because she has a plan. She decided earlier that after school she's going to go home. She says, "I'm going to go straight home." But if Kenta says, "Wow, this bag is heavy," Susan will say, "Oh, I'll help you with it," because she's decided to help him right then. But here, if Kenta says, "What are you doing after school today, Susan?" Susan might say, "I don't know yet. Maybe I'll go to the park," because she doesn't have a plan. She's just deciding right then. This is be going to and will. Our third point is this. If we have Yumi and Chris are talking, and Yumi says, Chris, have you ever visited Japan? Chris could say, yes, there last summer. There's probably a couple of things you have learned. A lot of you might say, yes, I have been there last summer. Well, that's our point today. How about this one? Yumi and Chris are talking. Yumi, can you speak Spanish? Yumi says, yes, since I was 10 years old. Is it I studied or I have studied? That's our third point, is did and have done. Two different ways to talk about things in the past. So did, which is what we call the simple past, is when we're talking about things that happened in the past and are finished. So for example, Chris, have you ever visited Japan? Chris would say, yes, I went there last summer. Last summer, he went to Japan, it's finished. Okay? But he wouldn't say, yes, I have gone there last summer. Because have done, a little bit confusing, is for things that started in the past and are still continuing. Okay? So for example, Yumi, can you speak Spanish? Yes, I have studied it since I was 10 years old, because she is still studying it now. Now, if she doesn't study it anymore, she might say, yes, I studied it when I was younger, because it was in the past and it's finished. Okay? But for something in the past and finished, we will not say have done. So if we think about this, we can practice. Yumi, Chris, did you have a good time last summer? Yes, to the beach every day. Now last summer is finished. So what do you think we might say here? And here, Chris, Yumi, do you know this restaurant? Yumi, yes, there many times. Is she finished going there? Will she never go there again? And finally, Chris, Yumi, do you know this restaurant? Yes, there for the first time last weekend. Last weekend is in the past. It's finished. So what do you think she might say? It'll look like this. Chris, did you have a good time last summer? Yes, I went to the beach every day. Because again, last summer is finished. I went to the beach. It's all done. Chris, do you know this restaurant? Yes, I have gone there many times. Because Yumi is not finished going there. Okay? She will still go there again in the future. But Yumi, do you know this restaurant? Yes, I went there for the first time last weekend. Because again, last weekend is finished. When she went there, that's in the past, and it's done. So we'd use the simple past. Okay. So, to review, we looked at 3 points today. The first one is greetings. I'm fine, thank you. Usually we don't say, I'm fine, thank you, if someone greets you in English and says, how are you? What would we say? Do you remember? That's right. We'd say, great, thanks. Or if you're being very formal, like to a teacher, very well, thank you. We talked about will and be going to talk about things we're going to do in the future. Will is for something that we have just decided to do, and going to is for something we have a plan to do. For example, this weekend, I'm going to go shopping, because I have a plan to go shopping. Okay? But right now, maybe I will have a drink of water, because I didn't make a plan to have a drink of water. And finally, talking about the past, did and have done. Okay? Did, the simple past, is to talk about something in the past that is finished, and have done is talking about something that started in the past and is still continuing. Okay? So last week, I went shopping and had fun with my friends, but since I was 10 years old, I have studied Japanese. Okay? Those are our 3 points today. So, thank you very much for listening to my 3 one-point lessons in English, and please enjoy your online visit to University. Thank you very much.